Hello, my busy bees. This is Sugar Bee Cookies in Western Canada, and I'm going to show you today how to decorate these holiday cookies in 3 colors of royal icing and a base white glaze. We're going to be decorating a Christmas tree, sort of a greenery wreath, and a botanical stem. If you don't have these cookie shapes, if you're baking yourself, you can use just any shapes you want and still do these techniques. We're going to be working with a piping consistency icing. If you want to know about icing consistencies, look to the upper corner here and I will have a link to a short video about that. If you receive my kit, you will have gotten a practice sheet. You can go again to this video in the upper corner and follow the video for practicing. And I highly recommend you do that before we actually get to this step. You will need a paintbrush that you can use for food, a needle tool, a scribe tool, or a skewer. I provide disposable ones in my kit. This particular kit will also have the paintbrush. And you will need a damp, clean cloth or paper towel and some scissors. So let's just get started. What we're going to do first is prep. So we're going to prep our icing bags. I already have this one open. You can see it will pipe out a nice line of icing. My actual red is not open, so I'm going to show you that. We're going to ignore the food coloring all over my hands today because it has been a busy day mixing icing and food coloring stains. You're going to see a seam in your bag right there. You want it at the top down the middle. And then you want to push the icing out of the way. And you'll have just a little tip on there. Hopefully you can see that we're going to snip off. Pay attention to where that little piece of plastic goes. And you should get just a nice thin line. Always go smaller on the cut, and you can always cut a little more off if need to. Oh, it was my green that was already open. So my green was already open. And I'm just testing all the lines. You can do that on a little piece of wax paper or something. I'm going to put my scissors away. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys a really sneaky trick that you can do for quicker cookie decorating, which works great during the holidays. We're not going to flood and fill the whole base of the cookie. I want a little bit more of a rustic look with this collection. So what I've done is I have a thinned down royal icing. You can see it moves quite a bit. It's got some air bubbles in it, but that's okay. I'm going to tap them out, but it won't really matter. If you receive the kit, I would give this a stir. The color or the water may have separated a little bit from the rest of the molecules of icing. And then clean off your scribe tool. So what we're going to do before we do anything is we're going to take our cookies, and you're going to take a nice dollop of icing or glaze, put it on the cookie, and just use the brush to pull it. I'll clean up the edges after. Go slow. It doesn't really matter how it looks because it is so thin it will actually level and flood itself out. So don't spend too much time trying to fix like this, because you're going to actually just add some more things to fix. Let the icing do the work for you. When you get to the edges, so don't worry about all of that. When you get to the edges, I'm pulling the icing down off the edge. Kind of just gives you an edge to work with instead of bare cookie like this. Now this icing, this glaze is going to keep moving. So you can give it a little shake. You can see if you have any little bare areas, but honestly, those bare areas are going to lend to the look of the rustic nature. And you can use your needle tool to kind of move the icing around a little bit. But there. So I'm lightly brushing across the top. I'm not pressing down against the cookie. And that's how I'm kind of getting a little more of a smoother surface. Okay, we're going to go ahead and do that for all our cookies. So I'm just going to quickly get that done. I would suggest you pause the video and do yours as well, and then we'll come back and I'll show you how to decorate them. Okay guys, so I've done my glaze on all 3 of my cookies. Yours should look similar. You can see I was not worried about perfection. I want this to be rustic. You can try and get it as perfect as you want, but the icing, when it's this thin, will be a little bit translucent in areas, so don't stress about that. What I would recommend is that we leave these for about 5 to 10 minutes to kind of firm up. And the reason why we've done them as a glaze is because they'll be ready to decorate on in just 10 minutes. If we did a whole flooding outline, we would have to wait a couple of hours probably for that to crust up and harden enough to work on. So go ahead and set them aside carefully. Go get yourself a sip of coffee and come back to your cookies in about 10 minutes. Just give the video a pause. You can also put a fan nearby or a ceiling fan overhead on so that it helps dry them a little bit quicker. Okay, I'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, did you guys manage to wait? You may notice that your cookies may still have a shine to them, but they're starting to get just a little bit matte. That's about when you want to start working on them again, or you can just let them dry all together. This doesn't have to be an all-in-one process. We're going to be doing our tree first. So the tree is this one. I realize that the little leaf looks very similar, that we're going to do our sort of botanical stems on. You can set the other 2 aside for the time. And the tree, we're going to take our green, and I know this is a little bit scary, but we're here to have fun. This is not meant to be anything stressful. We're going to start on the bottom section first, and I'm going to be just doing, I'll show you on the board here, I'm just going to be doing simple little quick rustic loops. And I'm going to be doing them on this whole bottom section. If your cookie is still a little bit wet, that's okay. This will still work for this cookie. So I'm going to start, just to show you, I'm going to start up near where the next section is, because eventually I want them kind of overlapping each other. And I'm just going to loop around the cookie and follow the shape. And you can go in and do another loop if you want to. Try not to follow exactly the same lines that you did before. You can always add a line if you want. Just go really simple, because you want to come in now with your lighter green and in between those, and you can work slow. You just want to add that little highlight color to show some definition. Super easy, guys. Non-threatening. And it's going to look great when it's done. So we're going to come up to the next section. I'm going to start there and loop down, and I'm going to kind of follow the shape of the cookie. So you start outwards and start coming up and down and then outwards again. And you can stop anytime you want. You can reassess. And I'm almost overlapping the top of the section underneath, just to cover all those little sections, or those little ends. I'm going to come in with another. Oops, I broke my line. That's okay. Just pick it up and start again. I don't like that I have a gap there, so look how easy that is to fix. Come in with your other color. You want to try and leave a little bit of that rustic white underneath showing. But you can always go back in any areas that you don't particularly like and add a little bit more. But I would suggest waiting till you're done the whole cookie and then you can see. And then we're just gonna do the same thing on the next section. Now you may notice naturally that your loops are getting a little tighter because you're working with a smaller section. You may want to not layer so much when it's a tighter section. Meaning just put down a little less icing. And when we get to the top, you're going to start in the top. Did you see that? I worked a backwards loop there. See, you can change the direction. Add just a little bit of that lighter green. Now you can look at your whole cookie and decide if there's any areas. Like right here, I don't like how this is. So I'm actually just going to come in with my green or my dark green and see how easy it is to trick the eye. That mistake is still in there. But whatever we lay on top is really kind of where your eye is going to go. Oops. And if you get too dark in one area, just add a little highlight. How cute is that? Now, what we can do is we can come in with our red and add little baubles. And you can do this any way you want to. I like to do little trios. I like to pick probably 3 places on my cookie to do those. One somewhere in the middle and one at the top and one at the bottom. I've got icing all over my hands. And then I go in and look at other areas that I can add single ones or little doubles. And this one's going to be a double. That's going to be a double down here too. Nice and simple. We have a Christmas tree. Great job, guys. Okay. And that's why it didn't matter how our base looked, because we're covering it up. But we also like that little bit of rustic look that comes through. So we're going to set this one aside. And the next one we're going to work on is this leaf shape. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our light green and I'm going to just start at the bottom, and it doesn't have to be a perfect line. I'm actually purposely doing a little bit of a wonky side line, and I'm going to create a guide mark. And then I'm going to create a couple little stem or other lines. I'm going to clean off my tip. I'm going to just pick a couple of places. Pardon me. Because I keep getting a little air bubble. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to create little ovals over top of those. And if you have any little mistakes like this, be very careful when you pick it up because your icing underneath the white may still be wet like there. So just go really gently. You can always cover it after. I'll show you how. You can also always just do something like this and add a little more icing. Okay, and then you're going to go in and fill those little rounds. Nice good squeeze. I'm squeezing really good to get a nice puffy edge, and then I'm releasing. And if it's not perfectly filled, that's fine, because that's when you're going to use the needle tool to pull that icing and push it where you want it to go. You can pull it right down onto the stem, and that's why I wasn't too worried about that mistake. You can kind of swirl it around and reshape the little leaf. Now this is a little bit of a thicker icing, so it may leave a little bit of a texture, but I'm going to show you a trick that we can do later to help hide that. I'm going to come in with my dark green, and somewhere up here, that's okay if I have a broken line, I'm going to do that. And before I do anything with that, I am actually going to create one more here up into this second up leaf, and a little bit of a shorter one here. Okay, so we're going to focus on this line, and we're going to kind of do like a pine needle thing. And you're going to work over top of lines that you already have, and that's okay. Think a feather shape. I'm just off the center. Oops. And it's okay if you have little mistakes like that. They are going to be hidden. I'm just starting off the center and working my way up. And then I'm going to come to the other side. So you can see it's almost got that feather shape. And you just want to work nice and slow. And it doesn't look great, I know, but that's okay, because we're going to leave that for a minute. And then you can come in and start layering, kind of like we did on the tree. Now, also like what we did on the tree, you could do, what's the best way to show you? You could do little loops. So you can just kind of zigzag back and forth. Or you can just layer individual little lines, whatever you find easier. You can always take your needle tool a little bit and just pull down the center all the way. Clean up any little areas you don't like, but we are going to hide some of those areas, so don't worry. And you can always hide it with just another little loop. If there's any areas you really don't like, just go in and just add a simple little line to cover it. Okay, so I'm still noticing I have a little extra room up here. You may or may not. If you do, you can always add another one, and you can go different sizes too. It depends how big you made them and how big you made your pine stem. Okay. Now before I do anything more, you always assess by adding your other details, and then you can kind of see where you have space, but a little bit of negative space is good. That would be the white that we have. So on these stems, we're going to add some red berries. So I'm going to go close to the surface, right over top of my stem, not necessarily above it, but right on top, and I'm going to squeeze a nice dollop of icing. This red is very red. Reds tend to get stronger the longer they sit. Your kit may have slightly different colors, a little less dark and more earthy tones. It depends on when I've created your kit. I'm going to do one on the next one too. And you can see I'm keeping that tip right in there, and I'm actually using it a little bit to move the icing around. And then because I like things in trios, it visually looks better. I'm going to do one. I don't need a stem for it. I'm actually working right over top of that area there. So this works really well. Even though this is a trio, this is in pairs or a 4, so it's an even number. Because we have a single stem of something in a trio, it works overall for the eye and the design. Now, what you can do is outline. If you're feeling competent, confident, whichever word you choose, you can add a little outline and a little texture. Awesome. You guys did a botanical stem. We're going to set this one aside. And then we're going to work on our round. So with the round, this is going to be a little bit different. We're going to do just a little bit of sprays of those greenery. So just a little bit of a smaller version of this, which is why we left it to last. So I'm going to take my dark green. I'm just going to turn my cookie and see if there's any edges that kind of didn't come out as clean, like down here. So that's where I'm going to work, because this is going to cover up some of that. And if this is the center of my cookie, you can actually use your needle tool as a guide to push in the glaze. And if you want, you can create yourself little guide marks, but you don't have to. Just watch what I'm going to do next first. You can always rewind the video. I'm going to just take my green and I'm going to kind of follow up halfway around the cookie. You could start up and come down. I'm going to leave a little space in the middle because they're going to end up joining. And we're going to do the same thing that we did with the pine here. But we're going to keep this simple because we're working smaller. This is more just a zigzag back and forth. And again, you can do these as individual little lines if you want to. Or you can just do that. Be sure to turn the cookie however you need to, or work on a turntable if you happen to have one. I'm not worried about that center. I want a little bit of gap. I need a little bit of room. And I'm just zigzagging. Very easy. Doesn't have to be symmetrical perfectly. It doesn't have to be exactly the same size on each. And I would recommend letting this sit for a couple of minutes or turning that fan on. So here's to another sip of your coffee. And we'll come back in just a couple of minutes. We want this to crust up a little bit before we start layering things on top. Okay, so we come back. Now we're going to add a little more of those kind of simple little leaves. And the placement is up to you, but I'm actually going to do one sort of right here. I'm actually going to show you. I'm going to do one there. And then I'm going to see how that looks. I might do a smaller one right over top. I kind of want them asymmetrical. So all I'm going to do is pipe a line, and I'm going to get sneaky with this one. Instead of the bigger one like on here where we outlined it and filled it in, all I'm going to do is create a little dot. I'm going to take my needle tool and pull that down onto the stem. Now be careful if you do this, because if your darker green is still wet, you could be dragging some of that. So just go easy. Don't be afraid to go right over top of it. But again, don't pull down too deep. Okay. And then I'm going to do a smaller one right there, right over top. I want that layered feel. And this one's only going to have 2 or 3 of these. Don't be like me. Make sure you go and clean off your tip before you do anything, because you don't want to pull extra colors or icing into. And you can kind of always go in and fix it a little bit. See? And I think I'm actually going to do something sneaky here, as if it's coming out the top. There's no right or wrong. There's just whatever you think looks good. So because of that, I wanted to do one right here. And if you've done it further away from your stem, that's okay. You can always just go back in and add that line. And again, we're going to add some berries to hide some of these things, these discrepancies, little conjunct. Sorry guys, my mic cut out. Hopefully it hasn't been cutting out too much during the video. Okay, so I'm just going to look at it. You can do it whatever balance you want, that's fine. I think I'm going to add one more little one right there. Less truly is more. It's easy to kind of go overboard. If you've done a similar thing like I've done here and you don't like that one sneaking out the top, you can kind of just come in with another one or do a sneaky one over here just to show you. You can do whatever you want. Okay, so now we're going to take our red and I'm going to do smaller berries on this one because I kind of want to tuck them in different places, but I'm going to focus on that center section first to kind of hide those areas. And I'm just adding a couple of areas that I want berries. And I'm not always working with the same number. You know, I have a trio, I have a single, and I have a group of 2 there. And there you have kind of like a little half wreath. So we have a little half wreath, a botanical stem, and then of course your tree. And look how amazing they look together. I hope you had fun decorating, guys. Be sure to follow along with more upcoming tutorials. Bye.